It's about to become a familiar routine for these police. The first 5 of 29 Newcastle officers who were given transfer notices take up their posts this week. But it's a bitter pill. All are senior constables who have lived in the area for about 10 years and were told their jobs were secure as long as they didn't apply for promotion.
After commuting up to 2.5 hours to get to the work site and doing your 8.5 hours, then coming back another 2.5 hours, after a period of time that would take its toll.
The police department first suggested the idea 9 months ago when Sydney-based police had complained they weren't able to transfer out of the city under the normal scheme. Some were commuting from the Central Coast and Newcastle. Now these officers are facing 3 years of separation from families or commuting with no guarantee they'll be moved back. There's almost no housing assistance or travel allowance. The last hope for the officers is to convince the monitoring committee set up by the Police Commissioner that the forced transfer system is unwarranted because on average 25 police officers leave the Hunter voluntarily every year. Individual appeals against the moves have so far been unsuccessful. The deadline for the monitoring committee to make its final recommendation is the 25th of May. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News. "22-year-old Lisa Ryan is the best women's wave skier in the world, and next month she defends her Australian title on the Gold Coast for the 3rd time. Lisa and Newcastle manufacturer Doug Holliday have designed a new board for the small waves expected in the Sunshine State. Today she tried it out. The 2-metre board of fiberglass and timber veneer is lighter, shorter and more streamlined at the back and base.
In the smaller surf, it'll be interesting to see how it goes compared to the other skis, but the way that I've been surfing on it is really good.
As with Lisa's last custom-made board, this one also features the innovative kinked nose.
With taking off on a late wave, that kinked up nose allows you to take off later but still get away with the wave. So it allows you to take off later, which also gives it more thrill and it's more spectacular for the judges to watch.
After next month's Nationals, Lisa moves on to the World Cup in New Zealand in November. And although the reigning world champ, she's taking nothing for granted.
Still always a competitor, and you have to always watch what's coming up underneath you, so you have to stay that one step ahead all the time.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News. This is where the Sydney developer wants to build the retail outlet in the middle of the Cessnock Sports Ground.
I don't think at this stage that I can mention his name, but yes, he's a colleague of mine, and he did ask me to have a look at this sports ground for development purposes.
Local real estate agent Peter Carver has been liaising with the developer since December. He says he can't yet reveal details of the company involved, but it's known it's a large retail firm, possibly the size of Kmart or Coles. According to Mr Carver and Councillor Joel Fitzgibbon, who is supporting the idea, the sports ground has been chosen because of its proximity to the CBD. Councillor Fitzgibbon says a new sports ground would be established if the idea got the go-ahead, and the plan would have enormous benefits for the city.
And we've got to improve that link between the Cessnock and get those visitors stopping in Cessnock, and I think this major retailer might be an attraction for them.
This isn't the first time a development like this has been proposed for the sports ground. Back in the early 80s, an almost identical plan caused such an uproar the then Mayor Eric Fitzgibbon lost his job. Manager of the Cessnock Supporters Club John Knipe was involved in the fight to stop the plan 11 years ago.
I'm a little bit disappointed that the thing has emerged again, because I thought that the people had made it very clear some 11 years ago they didn't want it.
Councillor Fitzgibbon admits it's a controversial issue, but he's confident it will receive more support this time around.
I've already been in contact with both the Lees Club and the Chamber of Commerce, and this time consultation is the operative word, and before we go too far with it, we'll be talking to those people.
For 9 months, the future of the 16 employees at Martins Creek Quarry has been uncertain. Martins Creek and the quarries at Ardglen near Murrurundi and Bombo at Kiama are the state-owned operations that supply the crushed stone known as ballast for railway lines. Last April, State Transport Minister Bruce Baird deemed the 3 quarries non-core businesses. A report was commissioned to investigate the efficiency of the state rail-run quarries and assess if the private sector could operate and supply the ballast cheaper.
I'm saying to the Minister that State Rail can best operate these quarries under their current ownership. I don't believe that private enterprise could even get close to what we're doing.
Mr Blackmore believes State Rail can supply the ballast at half the price quoted by private enterprise. He says the commissioned report is now complete and wants the government to make public its decision.
I'm calling on the Minister to release the result of that report, because I think it's grossly unfair that you have employees, their jobs are in the balance, they don't know where the future lies.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The Kings spent most of last year with their backs to the wall. After numerous losses, it was revealed the team was in all sorts of strife behind the scenes. Players were unhappy and left the club mid-season, something coach Bill Turner doesn't want to see again. For the past 3 days, the team has been working out at the new Gosford City Basketball Stadium at Beachside Terrigal. And Coach Turner hasn't had his team resting in 5-star accommodation. He wants them to rough it a little and has them staying in the Backpackers Lodge. American import Leon Trimmingham doesn't mind where he sleeps as long as he can play ball. The 22-year-old is believed to be blessed with a vertical jump of 1 metre. And the team physio wants him to keep it, working hard to make sure he's well and truly warmed up before training after fellow import Mario Donaldson tore a groin muscle yesterday and will sit out for at least 4 weeks. The Kings will open a training session to the public tomorrow morning.
You deserve more than a Coke after all the recent effort. How are you?
Bob Carr has been travelling the state on a fact-finding mission. In the Hunter today, the opposition leader met some of the bushfire volunteers who served on the front line when he visited the headquarters of Lake Macquarie's Bushfire Control Centre.
This is the main radio for all tankers for fire control.
Last week, the state government announced a special cabinet committee would review current bushfire controls, but Mr Carr says the investigation doesn't go far enough.
Well, I don't think a closed-door inquiry by a cabinet subcommittee is good enough. I think we need a public inquiry where people like the firefighters I met today, and they've all got something to say, can put their case. There's no way they're going to get before a closed-door cabinet inquiry.
Mr Carr also believes communities near bushland could play a bigger role in reducing potential hazards through a neighbourhood fire watch program.
We need to mobilise them to reduce hazards in their backyards and between their backyards and the bush.
Following the recent bushfire crisis, Mr Carr says the main lesson lies in effective hazard reduction.
We've got to see that the risk is reduced by sensible strategic hazard reduction in large areas of bushland, whether they're state forests or national parks.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Dogged by a poor drainage system, homes on the Woy Woy Peninsula are often threatened by floodwaters. It's a consequence of the rapid development in the area, and Gosford Council was hoping to secure federal funds which had been set aside for South Australia's multifunction policy. But federal member for Robertson, Frank Walker, says that option is no longer a possibility.
Well, the new South Australian government's decided to go on with the multifunction policy, so the federal investment in that is going to stay in South Australia.
While that money may not be available, Mr Walker says he'll be lobbying the Deputy Prime Minister to find other funds for the urgently needed works. Gosford's application under the Better Cities project also has the backing of the state government, and the federal member is confident the funding will come through.
The drainage problems on the Central Coast are pretty well known to the federal government. They have been putting money in, of course, each year, but we need a lot more, and this is an ideal Better Cities project.
Gosford Mayor Dirk O'Connor says if the money is allocated, it will end decades of hardship for residents.
It'll make a massive difference to the existing infrastructure. We can't possibly afford the $43 million that's needed to drain the area.
Last night, the sprint car pack couldn't have been tighter. In the heats, the leading group had been constantly at each other, and with just 2 laps to go, someone got a little too close. The race eventually restarted and Robert Farr took the money. On Saturday night, Muswellbrook's Brian Thorley walked away with a distinct wobble after this prang in the Formula 500s. After the restart, everyone was keen to get on with it. However, one driver gained too quickly on the leaders and rolled 4 times before he'd realised he'd clipped wheels. Staff worked to repair the damage to the track and try and keep the corners smooth, but they couldn't control the speed. And there wasn't much rest for the tow truck crew, particularly when the drivers started playing dominoes. The sidecar riders couldn't keep out of trouble either. Broken Hill's David Kirshner dug in on one corner and landed without injury, but was struck by a following bike, the impact breaking his leg. And the urge to create a scene also spread to Lismore in one of the most spectacular spills in years. Dennis Jackett went up and over, but walked away unhurt. And the accidents don't stop there. On Wednesday, the American Super Sedan team returned to Newcastle. It's the only place the Yanks haven't won during their tour, and last time they were in Newcastle, the local drivers bumped them into oblivion.
HMAS Tobruk is no stranger to Newcastle. The amphibious warfare vessel was built and commissioned here in 1981. Today she returned, carrying more than her usual complement of crew. Also on board, midshipmen from the Defence Academy, Newcastle Naval Reserve cadets and 24 hunter teenagers who won an essay competition to sail with the ship. For the past 24 hours, the transport vessel, which served in Somalia last year, has played host. Its civilian visitors spent last night on board, sailing from Sydney this morning.
I got a chance to actually steer the ship through the heads of Sydney and the harbour, and other than that, it was really good.
Any thoughts on a naval career?
Still undecided yet.
One young lady likely to pursue a career on the high seas is Emma Jones. The Newcastle naval cadet has been on board Tobruk for a week.
We've been doing work with the sailors, painting, cleaning, just preparing to come back to Newcastle. Seamanship, lectures, just Navy orientation type drill things.
All that hard work, and you say it's been fun?
Yep, wouldn't miss it for the world.
HMAS Tobruk will be open for public inspection tomorrow afternoon before participating in Australia Day celebrations at Lake Macquarie on Wednesday. 2 days later, the ship will head north to Townsville for exercises with the Army. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Erosion of our riverbanks is a constant concern, and if nothing is done, it could pose a major threat to the environment and livelihoods of people who work the land.
The river flats, which are behind the river banks, are our most important agricultural areas. So, every time a flood comes and we lose some of that, we're losing our most valuable farming land.
To protect areas in danger of erosion and flood damage, the Catchment Trust will oversee the largest single riverbank restoration program conducted in the Hunter Valley. Over the next 2 years, $20 million from the state government's National Disaster Relief Program will be spent on 26 sites along the Hunter, Patterson and Williams rivers. Today, member for Maitland Peter Blackmore handed over the second $500,000 instalment. This site at Taro on the Hunter River is the first to be completed. A combination of vegetation and rocks have been used to increase stability.
We're hoping they will trap sediment and encourage the growth of these clumps of reeds that we've planted here. That'll produce an environment along the edge of the river which is more conducive for nursery areas for fish and prawns.
Mr Ferner expects all projects to be completed by the middle of next year. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The agreement will see the price of hard coking coal fall by $3.85 US. For our producers, it will mean the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars. Executive Director of the New South Wales Coal Association, Meredith Helikar, said from Sydney today that while the deal was disappointing, they knew it was coming. It's a result of falling Japanese steel production, an undercutting of prices by the Canadians, and a general oversupply of coal in a depressed world market. Similar deals by coal companies last year saw the United Mine Workers implement a series of stoppages around the country. While no firm decision has yet been made, it is, according to the union, once again a strong possibility.
We're not going to sit back at this stage, now that there's been a trend set in the hard coking coal market, and see that trend reflected in the steamer coal. If we've got to take some retaliatory action, we'll do that.
Meredith Helikar has labelled the union as irresponsible. She says any mention of industrial action could jeopardise negotiations on steaming coal prices, of which the Hunter is the major supplier. The union, however, disagrees, saying the damage has already been done by coal companies. The union has called for changes to the way the price of coal is negotiated.
Our people go in there as individual producers, and the inevitable happens that one's played off against the other.
Mine employees will meet in Cessnock on February the 8th to discuss the matter. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Drawing 75 contestants from throughout Australia and overseas, the championships are marked on international calendars. Day 3 of competition saw an increase in pace with the arrival of a strong nor'easterly. Difficult manoeuvres were attempted as contestants tried to overtake their opponents. Some were more successful than others. Failure of equipment and choppy conditions meant several board riders could only cross the finish line with some assistance. All in all, it's been an eventful 3 days. Contestants say they'll be back again next year. Liz Rogers, NBN News.
Warren Spink is a shattered man. Earlier today he was called into coach Jim Foley's office and was handed a letter stating he was available for immediate transfer.
They've placed me in the transfer list, so obviously they made their intentions that Warren Spink's not wanted at the club.
And with the letter still in his hand, he was delivered another bombshell. Despite being the league's leading goal scorer, he was dropped.
I was told by the coach that I wasn't playing in the first team for Wednesday night's game for Friday or, for the rest of the year. And, after a couple of board members come in, there was further discussions, and when I left, apparently I was playing back in the first team. So at the moment, I think I'm playing.
Spink is one of the most sought-after players in the comp and would have little trouble finding a new club.
I don't really want to leave. I mean, we moved, relocated up here, myself and my fiancée, and we're happy to stay here. But sure, I mean, I have had offers from other clubs throughout the year, the end of last year, but, we'll see if maybe we can sort something out here.
In another development, last night the team gathered for its first training session since losing 4-1 last Saturday. But Coach Foley was absent, and it was left to the team's strapper to tell Laurie McKenna he was out for the squad for tomorrow's game. McKenna then quit on the spot. Late this afternoon, 6 first graders met with officials at the club for what's believed to be a heated meeting about the off-field crisis. At this stage, no official statement on the club's playing or coaching future has been issued by the board. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
The disease take-all is a fungus that attacks the roots of wheat plants, affecting the wheat industry to the tune of $200 million each year. But now scientists from Cowra in the state's southwest are fighting fungus with fungus.
The protective fungus is used by allowing it to colonize the wheat root system before the pathogen attacks the roots. In so doing, the wheat plant is then protected against the disease.
It's not a total control, but used with crop rotation, the protective fungus is a huge step forward. New South Wales Agriculture is looking at commercialising the new discovery, although that could be some years down the track. It was not only a day of proudly being Australian, but also to say thank you to the men and women who bravely fought the bushfires on the Central Coast. This region was one of the worst affected in the state, with more than 30 houses engulfed by the fires. The damage could have been much worse if it weren't for the courageous firefighters. 100 vehicles involved in that mammoth battle against the flames slowly edged through Gosford's main street. 500 people marched behind. All the groups that worked tirelessly during the emergency were presented with awards, including individual bushfire brigade units. The star of TV's police rescue, Sonia Todd, was the celebrity Aussie Day ambassador, but the cheers were reserved for the real rescue celebrities. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Many of us have experienced a secret desire to drive an MG at frightening speeds and to feel the rush of wind through our hair. A father and daughter team from the Newcastle suburb of Bullaroo are set to do just that this weekend at the 1994 Castrol Classic Race meeting at Amaroo Park. David and Brooke Walker have worked together to restore the 1963 MGB in period style. Third place getter 3 years running in the event, 19-year-old Brooke will be looking to improve her performance. Reaching speeds of up to 180 kilometres per hour, Brooke will be competing against 35 other classic models including Jaguars, Alfa Romeos and Ferraris. But with Dad close at hand, she's confident of a big win. Liz Rogers, NBN News.
Within the surfing fraternity, Mark Richards has tremendous respect. The boy from Merewether, who went on to win a record 4 world titles, has another achievement, Medal of the Order of Australia. The humble champion was surprised by the announcement.
Well, I think it's a record of my competitive success, and I think the really nice thing about it is that it's a recognition of surfing, I think, being accepted by the masses out there.
Lake Macquarie's Mayor John Kilpatrick also was honoured for more than 35 years community work. Inspecting the sailors from HMAS Tobruk at Spears Point, the Mayor said he was overwhelmed to receive such an award.
That was nice. I think everyone likes to be recognised, but it was nice. It was a privilege, but I think it also does make you a bit humble as well.
Others to be honoured with the Medal of the Order of Australia, Councillor Jack Ireland for his service to the Bulladilla community, Margaret Mallon for her work with Meals on Wheels, Robin Langley for his work in the performing arts and sport, Joy Poole for polo cross, both as a player and coach, General Eva Burrows, formerly from Tighes Hill, for her Salvation Army work. Military honours for Warrant Officer Hannah at Singleton Army Base, Warrant Officer Buckton at the Williamtown RAF Base, Colonel Donald Murray and Desmond Harrigan, all proud Australians on this special day of the year.
Here at Lake Macquarie, thousands converged on Spears Point Park as the ship's company from HMAS Tobruk exercised its right to freedom of entry.
With swords drawn, bayonets fixed, drums beating, bands playing and colours flying, given under the common seal of the City of Lake Macquarie. Bands playing and colours flying. Please proceed.
The tradition, dating back to medieval times, has become a symbol of friendship between vessels of the Royal Australian Navy and the cities they visit. Now a regular guest to the shores of Lake Macquarie, entertainer Normie Rowe was the official Australia Day ambassador.
It doesn't matter what day of the year it is, it just happens to be the 26th of January that we can look towards being a cohesive community.
This year, 38 adults and 4 children were naturalised, receiving a commemorative native plant from their city. But it feels good to be an official Australian citizen?
Official Australian, yeah. Unbelievable.
Oh, it's much more cooler. It's not too hot.
And Lake Macquarie's outstanding citizens were recognised. 67-year-old Elaine Lenigan from Belmont North awarded Citizen of the Year for her community work, and Young Citizen going to 20-year-old Mike leadership. Celebrations continue tonight at Spears Point with a huge family concert. Out in the streets, some neighbourhoods were also celebrating with flair. Matilda, the 2-metre papier-mâché kangaroo from Cardiff, jumping into the spirit of Australia Day. Following a night under observation, 2-year-old Sky Hull has had an early lesson on water safety after being dragged unconscious from a creek near her Lake Macquarie home.
She went in after her bucket. She must have taken her bucket with her, and it fell into the creek, and she went in after it.
While Sky's mum called for an ambulance, her father began the first steps of CPR and persisted despite no initial response.
I stopped and went back through the routine again and cleared the airway, and she brought up vomit, and then I started the CPR, and she came around very quickly.
Sky was stabilised and flown by the Westpac Rescue helicopter to John Hunter Hospital, where she's made a good recovery. In most drowning cases, children can stop breathing seconds after they've entered the water. For Doug Hull, knowing what to do helps save his little daughter's life.
For sure, I think every parent, even if you don't even live anywhere near the water, you've got to learn it. I mean, a baby could fall down into a puddle in the bath. Very lucky little girl. Yeah, well, we're lucky too.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Arriving at Williamtown Airport after last night's demoralising 4-1 loss to South Melbourne, the Breakers were not in a jovial mood. Sitting near the bottom of the National Soccer League table, it's rumoured there are many woes facing the Newcastle club. One of the most worrying problems is the club's decision to put striker Warren Spink on the transfer list.
He has been shafted, made a scapegoat, which is a total disgrace, and I'm speaking on behalf of the team that all the boys think it's just absolutely unbelievable.
Coach Jim Foley admits there is some tension building between him and Spink.
He maybe didn't see eye to eye with me, and certainly as things are developing now and as certain comments are being made public and in my view in the wrong places at the wrong times, then clearly I'm not happy with that, and so obviously it does become a more personal thing, which is a shame.
Spink scored the Breakers' only goal last night from a penalty. Coach Foley still took him off with left in the game.
We'll be going to the board and we'll see what the board's got to say on Monday night, and we'll take it from there.